Hello, this is Howie, and I'm here to help you win with money. In this episode of Exposed by Math, I'm going to look at fiat currency, also known as cash or USD, versus Bitcoin. It's a very popular topic, and I would like to show you how holding either one of these money type instruments have fared over the last decade. So stay tuned and enjoy the episode. Before I begin, don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, if you are a Facebook fan, you can look me up on Facebook at Solving Chaos, or you can join a Facebook forum. Something like Investing 102 is a very popular one where I spend a lot of time in. So you can go there and find me there, and you can chat with me there. Today is February 17, 2021, and I wanted to start off with the value of digital coins today. Bitcoin is up. It broke $51,000 for the first time. Ether is up, and so that means all other coins are up. And I wanted to show you something before I begin. Let's look at Riot blockchain. Yesterday, Riot moved up $10 or 20% on really not a lot of movement. Bitcoin only really went up 2 or 3%, right? It went from 48,000 to 50,000 or a little bit under. But you can see Riot has moved up to $67 today. I'm going to be trading some more Riot blockchain to capture some more premium, take advantage of this. Now, it could drop, but who knows what's going to happen. I'm still going to try to take advantage of it and make some more money. So on to today's presentation. So the first thing we all know is, well, what is a fiat? Well, fiat is cash. Any type of currency that's made by a government, doesn't matter where you live, whether it's Canadian dollars, the British pound, the German mark, or the Japanese yen, or the US dollar. And the problem is we've been trained to think of it in that type of currency most of our lives. And then this new thing came out about a decade ago called Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was sort of a experiment in the beginning. No one knows what was going to happen. And I wanted to show you what is the last decade pattern between these two methods of currency or coins or investment or whatever you want to call it. So that's what we're going to look at. If you held cash since 2009, I'm going to do this in two different ways. You can see that the cash has some value. It's $1 is equal to a dollar. But that same US dollar would have really bought you less. And what I mean by that is, in 2010, that same item would have cost me $1.02, which means that the value of your dollar fell to 98 cents. That same dollar, if you went to like 2013, it would have cost you about $1.09, or here's the inflation rate. Or if you think of it in terms of a dollar, your dollar got devalued to about 92 cents. And I just built a chart. I used this inflation calculator, and then I did it in two different ways so you can understand it. So you can see, even over the last decade, something that cost $1 is now costing you 122, or your dollar is now worth 82 cents. So why does this matter? Most fiat currencies by design is made to lose value. This way, when you hide it under your mattress, or if you hide it even in the bank, they want your value to be worth less, so it encourages people to spend more and keep on working. Because the new dollar that you work for is generally a bit more. It's kind of weird how to think about that, because your paycheck will grow, but your dollar that you own, you see, even 10 years ago, had lost value. So that's the concept. This is the chart. If you look at the purchasing power of the US dollar, historically, it just generally goes to zero. That's the design of how currency is used. So now we're going to look at something a little bit different. Bitcoin, when it first invented, was probably worth nothing. Science experiment, no one knows what it was worth. It had almost no value. And we know that because in the beginning, the first transaction, 10,000 Bitcoin, was for 2 pizzas, known as Bitcoin pizza. So that gives you a really small value. Each coin was worth nothing. But in 2011, on February 9th, it broke par value, which is 1 USD. So 1 Bitcoin equals 1 USD. And the first time, I don't know if it's the first time, but the next time in 2013, 1 Bitcoin was par with gold per ounce, which is about $1,000 at that year. And then in 2017, there was a big run up. Bitcoin went, it just moved. It moved all the way up. And I remember Thanksgiving when everybody was following it. It was on the news a lot. It was on a famous sitcom, I think. And it hit 19,000. Then it crashed. And it basically was dead news. People didn't like it. It went as low as $3,000 or $4,000. It probably hovered around 6 or 7 for a lot of it. Then it started moving back up. And towards the end of 2000, it started getting popular. And today, and actually this is dated already, because today we just hit $51,000 this morning. And there's a lot of stuff happening. So you can see the trend. And that's the next thing we want to look at. Let's look at the trend. This is a chart of a Bitcoin value. I took an old chart on purpose because if we put 50,000 here, it skews all these a little bit lower. So I wanted to use a little bit older chart, which is from here, it goes from November 24, where Bitcoin was barely breaking 20,000. But you can see the movement. And there was a move down here that it touched 3,800 or something like that for a little bit. But you can see how it's trending and how it moves. Okay? Next one is side by side. I want you to see this so you can understand where we're going next. If Bitcoin is moving up and the dollar is moving down, it tells you which one is more valuable. But here's the problem. And we'll talk about this real quick. Is Bitcoin, how do you use Bitcoin as a currency? So we're going to run through this real quick. There's other videos that explain it with better graphics. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Is it better than gold? And it is at the store of value. The item that increases in value due to scarcity. Bitcoins will be very scarce. There's not enough to go around. There's over 40 million millionaires. And if each millionaire owned one coin, there wouldn't be enough for me and you. Or the other way to think about it is if you evenly distributed Bitcoin to each person in the world, you get 0.003 of a Bitcoin. If you evenly distribute it to everybody in the world. The other thing is, why is Bitcoin good as a currency or a store of value? It's more secure. Gold can be faked or diluted. It's easy to transfer. You can send Bitcoin to anybody in the world. And Bitcoin can be easily divided into many pieces. And I actually think this concept can even be solved because you can always change the code to say, let's make it divisible by even more decimal points. And that will have no negative impact. You're not creating more money. You're just creating more pieces out of the one whole. And everybody knows whether you have a pizza with 1 slice or a pizza with 10 slices, it's still the same pizza. You don't really change the value. Is it better than fiat as a currency? And so most people say it is. Beneath the covers, when banks do these final confirmation and settlement of, like, let's say credit card purchases, it can take, a few hours or it can take a few days. When you do international transfers, it can do the same thing. It can take days or a little bit longer. Whereas no matter how you're spending your Bitcoin, the final confirmation is generally within an hour or less. And that can be fixed. Bitcoin can actually be faster. Now, cash is the fastest settlement in one sense, right? I hand you cash at the street vendor. Me and you look at each other, we agree, I paid you, you received it, and we're done. But fiat does have some problems, and I do want to talk about that. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Delete that. But I do think Bitcoin does have a problem as a currency. So we're going to talk about that a little bit longer here. And I'm going to explain this in a very different way. Here is a Mickey Mantle card. 1952 top Mickey Mantle card. So imagine this. This card is rated as an 8. You see that here. Near mint. And there's a value of $71,000. Next year it's a value of 75. Then it's 83. Then it's 269. And you see the value generally goes up. Now, that's not a bad thing. When your collectible items go up, that's what you want. So on this chart, what I did was I took the same Mickey Mantle card and I divided it into 100 slices based on the pricing that we had before. And I wanted to ask a different question. Would you sell me free pieces of your Mickey Mantle card, free slices of the 100 that you have, right? Let's say you slice this card in 100 pieces in 2011 for a trip to Hawaii. I'll pay for your trip to Hawaii. You give me free little pieces of the 100 that you have. Or another way to look at it is, in 2013, you sell me 35 pieces, and I'm going to give you a brand new Lexus in 2013. Maybe a Lexus, I don't know, the SUV, the RX. I don't know if they had the RX 350 back then, but you get my point. What if I gave you a $45,000 car? You just give me 35 pieces of this Mickey Mantle card, which is worth, right, $800 a piece. So I'm asking for about 30 grand for your Lexus. Now, let's think about this before we go on. In one sense, it could be a good deal at the time of transaction. Your trip to Hawaii is gone, but this free pieces today is now worth, in 2017, $18,000. Your trip to Hawaii is a distant memory that may have only been worth $2,000 or $3,000. And same thing with that Lexus that I maybe exchanged for you in 2013. That Lexus is an old car today, probably worth less than $5,000. But the 35 pieces that I gotten, if you took the trade, you times this by 35, and you can see the value that I received is a lot more. So that's what I want to talk about next. You understand this concept that most people will not use a collectible as a currency, even if you have more than 1, 2, or 3, or 5 of them, right? If you're a sneakerhead, would you trade your Jordans away or the certain limited edition ones away? Because you can't get it back. So the problem is, even if prices fluctuate, most likely it's going to cost you more to buy it back. So it makes more sense for people to hold as long as possible before you selling it. And Bitcoin has a similar problem when using as a currency. You see, this is why cash works so well. Cash loses value over time. And so you have been trained to think of cash, when you're holding it, it's worth less and less and less. So with cash, you have trained yourself, but if I buy an asset with it, the asset can be worth more. So the most common one is cash, exchange for real estate, hold real estate, and then exchange it back for cash later. And that makes sense for you and me today. With cash, I exchange it for a piece of the stock market. I hold it, and then 20 years later, I exchange it back for cash, and it's worth more. Because the stock market or the asset or the collectible is worth more. The problem is, in Bitcoin, if you start with Bitcoin, what are you going to exchange it for? And then 10 years later, it's going to worth more. In fact, I can almost guarantee you that in Bitcoin, if you exchange it for anything else, it's going to worth less than if you just held on to the original Bitcoin. And this is sort of the problem that we have with Bitcoin as a currency. And this is why people will hold on to Bitcoins and will not exchange it for cash or any other good. In the same way, when you understood the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card, it makes no sense for you to trade a collectible that you know is going to go up in value. Sure, it may have fluctuation between each card shows and each year, depending on supply and demand, but you also know it's going to be worth more. And let me give you a real life example. Many of you do know what Ether is. And if you purchase a NFT or an ERC 721, you can buy digital assets in blockchain games today. And the most famous one was Crypto Kitties. Now, Crypto Kitty is not really a game, but I guess it is. You can call it what you want. But people collected a digital asset which cannot be duplicated or cannot have multiple owners. So there's value in it. But if I bought a digital currency for 2 Ether a couple years ago, can I sell it to you today for 3 Ether? Now, if you look at it from a cash point of view, it can be worth, right? Back then, Ether was $100 each or whatever it is. It was have very, very little value. Will somebody actually want to pay me $6,000 or free Ether for it? And I say the answer is no. The problem is, as Ether goes up in value, and today's worth about $1,800, as Ether goes up in value based on fiat value, what people are willing to pay is converted into a smaller amount. And that's sort of the challenge and the problem that we have today. And I may be wrong about this, but maybe in 50 years, if there's no other concept of other fiat currency, if there's only one currency in the world, then you sort of get rid of that problem. But for today, there's always going to be fiat or USD or Japanese yen or whatever it may be. And as long as there's something that's sort of working the opposite direction, buying and transaction in Bitcoin really makes no sense. You actually want to hoard it. You don't want to give it away. And here I go into the details of that. And why is that? Because the person who's buying something, he's spending his currency. And in US dollar, you do want to spend because the value is going down. But in Bitcoin, do you want to spend it? And here's an example. That Bitcoin pizza, the 10,000 Bitcoin he used to buy the pizza, is worth over $100 million. Well, that's kind of crazy. You would say that's a very expensive pizza. He should have been better off just holding it. And today he can sell, I don't know, 1 Bitcoin a week for the rest of his life, and he'll be fine. He'll have more than enough money to live off of. And the guy who's receiving the cash, right, the seller, only wants Bitcoin today because it's going to be worth more and more and more. And so there is a problem with that. And I don't think it's unsolvable in the short term. I think you can create a new system where if you're using a collectible to pay, you see nowadays, today's market, all collectibles are basically paid in cash. Whether you're going to an auction and buying a Ferrari 250 GTO, you're paying cash. And the problem is, while you paid whatever millions you paid for that Ferrari is going to be worth more. It's the same concept with Bitcoin or the same concept with Mickey Mantle card. And I think you have to design a system where if you're going to sell a collectible, you have a sort of a smart contract, like an installation plan, where the payment will be divided out over X amount of payments in the future. And then there's some guaranteed interest rate so that your payment will always, so the seller, right, the one who's receiving it, will have a guaranteed fiat value that will be worth more than what he would accept it if he just received the Bitcoin up front. Whereas the buyer will only benefit because of fluctuation in the price. If prices keep on going up, he will actually be saving money because the actual Bitcoin will be paid out less. Because if I pay 0.7 today, and then let's say the next installment is 0.6 and then 0.5 because the value is going up. But even with the interest rate added on, I'm actually going to give away less Bitcoin over time using that logic. And to summarize this, I do think Bitcoin makes a really good store of value. I think it's used as a currency hedge or a hedge against your balance sheet. A lot of big companies are starting to do that. They realize that store of value is obviously the most important thing, but in a dual system where we have Bitcoin and you have fiat, most companies will still use fiat to pay their bills, pay their electricity bill, pay their employees, buy items or machinery and investments using cash, but they hold the Bitcoin on their balance sheet so that your company will actually add value for doing nothing. And that's what you saw with Tesla last week when they invested $1.5 billion into Bitcoin. MicroStrategy owns a lot of Bitcoin. They've been doing it for years. But I think you're going to see this happen more and more and more. And I do think it's a problem. And this is what I want to address. And we talked about it already. For anybody who collects Bitcoin today, you already understand it. Why would you go out and want to spend Bitcoin when you know that really you're giving up more value? And so I think over the short term, and I don't know what short term is, I think the problem is while we're under this system, I don't think Bitcoin will ever be a currency until the day where a dual system is gone or fiat has less value or less usage. But until then, I still think for the next 20, 30, 40 years, we're always going to have a dual system. And I do think Bitcoin will only serve as a store of value and not necessarily as a peer-to-peer digital cash. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think. Comment below. I know I'm not here to convince everybody, and I know everybody's going to disagree with me. But for anybody who's been holding Bitcoin, you can't tell me that you felt good about spending your Bitcoin 2, 3, or 4 years ago and that you're happy about spending it. Because if you are, you obviously lost a lot of opportunity costs. Anyway, I want to bring this episode to an end. Don't forget to hit the like button, follow me, and as always, have a profitable day. Bye-bye.